whether it was heartfelt. Now, I'm being told right now that there is actually a press conference by the prosecutor. Let's go to it.
Actively hiding things, and because the abuse was horrific, and it would have been apparent to anybody that would have seen the kids that something was wrong here.
Is this some of the worst child abuse you've seen in your career?
Yes, and not just in my career, but in our office's career, in our institutional memory, this is one of the worst child abuse cases that we've seen.
You consider this precedent setting?
Can you?
In terms of the actual sentences they end up serving?
No, because I think the board takes everything into account so specifically.
You think Jodi's going to end up serving more?
I hope so. I hope that Jodi does serve more. I think that would only be fair. I think that Ruby should serve. So the sentence that they got is basically 4 to 30 years today, right? The 4 1-year minimum stat, and then in Utah you're capped at 30 years. I think that a 4-year minimum for Ruby's actions are entirely appropriate. I hope that Jodi serves more time than that, and I hope that she isn't out of prison until everybody is completely confident that she's no longer a risk. And to get there, she's going to have to acknowledge that she has done wrong, and that you can't use religion as a means to justify your crazy behavior.
Do you think I'm just trying to understand, why would the mother, in your opinion, deserve less time when she's torturing her kids versus a stranger? Wouldn't you hold a parent more accountable?
And again, so they both got the same deal, right? Yeah. Like we didn't give her a less of a minimum time. Part of the mission of what we do when we incarcerate people, I'll obviously want to see justice done. And a mother abusing her children in this way is awful. Awful. And people should go to prison for that. Something that is really important is that people shouldn't be released from prison unless they've hit the maximum amount of time they should be in, or they've done enough that justice is served, and it's clear that they're no longer a risk to the community. And I'm super concerned that Jodi, if she were released today, is a significant risk to gather followers. Ruby was essentially a follower of Jodi. And if she's gathering people and then convincing them to do this kind of thing, that's a huge risk. And those type of people shouldn't be walking the streets when they've committed these kind of crimes.
There was some back and forth with the restitution piece of this. Can you explain where you are with that?
So there were a couple of motions filed over the course of the last month about that, and we anticipate a restitution claim coming in that will cover ongoing therapy and physical care, physical recovery if needed, of the victims of these crimes. The state hasn't submitted a claim for restitution yet, and we want to make sure that there's plenty of time for all of that to be kind of analyzed and brought in before we close out restitution. And that should be the same for both defendants, right? Like both of them will end up with restitution orders against them, I assume.
Thank you.
Yep, I have a written statement that kind of recapsulates some of what I said in there and just talks a little bit about this. You guys are welcome to have that. We'll email that out also.
Thank you.
And thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
And did you mention 30 years?
We have installed 30.
I want to go
It's 1 to 15 per count.
Yeah. Can I have one, please?
But there's a statute that says if you're not convicted of a first degree felony,
so sorry.
you can't do more than 30.
Court's on. Yes, go ahead.
Well, Lauren, listen, this is what we were talking about before. There were it was a tale of two different sentencing hearings, if you will. One who took completely, Ruby Franke, the mother, complete responsibility. I have never heard people.
We're gonna.
thanking a lot of activity going on out there, like she did, for being arrested, willing to accept her sentence, knowing she had to go to jail, thanking the police, thanking the prosecutors, apologizing to her parents at a certain point in time and said, you show me unadulterated love, and I've showed you nothing but, unadulterated contempt, or words to those language, that Kevin, her husband, the love of her life, is going to have to finish what they started. Really, if she genuinely believes these things, and that's a question we have to ask, it was a gut-wrenching sentencing with a complete adoption, Lauren, of acceptance of responsibility. And just before we took that press conference, we saw the co-defendant, Jodi Hildebrandt, with a completely defiant tone, and I think that that is going to hurt her at the end. And sure enough, we find the prosecutor here says that he believes that the mom should get the minimum 4-year sentence, but that Jodi, who doesn't have insight into her conduct, should get more. Exactly what I was saying. What do you think?
I completely agree. This is what we've been hearing. You've had Jessie on A Long Crime many times, and she's always stated that she believes that their aunt is the one that is, responsible for this. We see the
Terry, if you could start with saying your first name and last name.
Douglas Terry, I represent Jodi Hildebrandt.
Doug, you said two sides to every story. It didn't seem like the judge agreed. What do you make of that back and forth in dialogue?
The seriousness of the case, the seriousness of the allegations, the seriousness of the facts that both Ms. Franke and Ms. Hildebrandt pled guilty to. I was not surprised at all by the judge's comments and questions of my client. I'm not prepared to go into specifics with respect to facts that are disputed in this case. I will stand by what I said on her behalf in the sentencing hearing, and that is that she entered into this plea agreement to take responsibility for her conduct in this case. Her statement that she hopes for both the physical and emotional healing of these children is absolutely sincere. How much time she serves will ultimately be up to the Board of Pardons, as with Miss Franke.
When she said that she loved the children, Chad and Sherry had smirks and were looked shocked on their faces. Do you have a comment about that?
That doesn't surprise me, but again, she was sincere in that statement.
Do you think she should have had more to say? Ruby spoke for a very detailed length of time, and Jodi had a few sentences. Did you go over that with her? Was there an opportunity for her to say more?
She had the opportunity to say whatever she wanted to say. I did not put words in her mouth. I wanted her to make a statement from the heart. That's what she felt like she needed to convey today, that it's about the children, not about her, and that's what she did.
The prosecution said there's phone calls that are recorded in which Hildebrandt lacks remorse. What do you know about those phone calls, and is she?
I know that early on in the case, she had phone calls with individuals that were in support of her, did not believe that she did the things that she was accused of doing. I have not listened to those phone calls, as the county attorney's office has. But again, whatever was said was early in the case, and that is not her position today.
So she's changed how she feels about it?
As often is the case when individuals are charged, arrested, accused, sometimes it's a process to come to the point where they take responsibility and accept the consequences.
A lot of people have spoken out about other victims in this case, the victims of Jodi and other different sorts. And I know this is about the children, but how much does that weigh into what you guys have discussed with Jodi?
As far as other victims, that has not been a factor.
Well, and prosecutors are saying that they're hoping that Jodi gets a lengthier, a heavier sentence. They feel that she's kind of the ringleader in this whole situation.
That's the prosecution's position. It has been from the beginning. As I said when we entered into the plea agreement, she did not do that because Ms. Franke had agreed to testify against her. That decision was made before Ms. Franke ever agreed to testify against her, to cooperate with the state.
Mr. Terry, you said that there were two sides to every case. What is the side of Jodi Hildebrandt that we're not seeing?
I'm not going to go into the specifics of allegations that she agrees with and doesn't agree with. I will stand by the statement that I made in the sentencing hearing, and that is that the factual basis that is set forth in the plea agreement, those are the only adjudicated facts in the case. She admitted to those facts. She takes responsibility for those facts. She's been sentenced on those facts.
This is a small, family-oriented community, and her home was essentially likened to a concentration camp. How did she square that? How did she walk around living in this community while there was a house of horrors?
I'm not prepared to respond to that. That's an allegation that I heard for the first time today. I mean, that's a characterization by the prosecutors, which again is no surprise. But that's from their perspective, and I'm not prepared to address that.
You don't feel that's an accurate description?
I do not.
You disagree with that?
I do.
Has Ms. Hildebrandt, has she expressed remorse to you about what happened?
Many times. Many times.
What is her remorse? What is she sorry about?
That she didn't make different decisions and that would have resulted in the children being more protected.
Is she delusional?
I'm not going to respond to that.
Has she had people come visit her family? I know Ruby has a larger family that has been a little bit more present at some of the hearings, but has she had some support in all of this?
I don't know that she's had visits, personal visits, but I know that she's been in contact with people who are supportive of her.
No family, though?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Is she going to sell her home? I know the restitution can play out for...
It's for sale, yes. Based on the fact that we anticipated a prison sentence, yes, it's for sale. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, thank you very much.
This is where it gets good, guys. Check this out.
Hi there. Okay, we've got another interview.
Do you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is?
Oh, shit.
Here, I'll answer your questions. He's her attorney. He can't answer them. My name's Adam Paul Steed, and if you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is, I'll answer tons of questions about her. I know my dad. Hey, Dad, come here. Come here. My dad has a file at home that's probably about 2,500 pages of records from court filings and just huge amount of documentation about Jodi Hildebrandt that we will share with everybody. I want you to know the same court that has ordered us not to share these documents is covering up this racket that Jodi Hildebrandt had with the Mormon Church in the 4th District Utah County Court. She abused my children the same way, almost, even in a different type of abuse. I think it could be argued worse. And that was 15 years ago. And I fought against Jodi Hildebrandt with my family and everybody to stop this monster of a lady. And Jodi went after me. She went after me, destroyed my life in the craziest way you could ever think of possible. Like, I was a victim of sexual abuse at Boy Scouts of America, Camp Little Lemhi in Idaho. And my dad helped us stop a predator. You can read it in the national press and everything. We changed the laws of sexual abuse so victims could come forward. We got rid of the criminal and civil statute of limitations. The Mormon Church knew who we were. And Elder Helam, Richard G. Helam, was he was the president of the First Quorum of the 70, the top probably executive functioning leader of the whole Mormon Church. And he sat with Jodi Hildebrandt as they destroyed my life in this court racket, like they've destroyed countless other people's lives. And they even had the gall to order my Mormon Stories thing where I brought some documentation off the internet saying that they didn't want me to say bad things to my children or in front of the children about my ex-wife. Well, if you're accused of sexual abuse by Jodi Hildebrandt, and if your ex-wife performed a falsification of sexual abuse, that professionals looked at the documentation and said, this is sexual abuse. This is sexual abuse. We have documentation for sexual abuse of my children by Jodi Hildebrandt and my ex-wife. And you know, this stuff was redacted in the Doppel paperwork. It was so horrible that it was redacted. And the courts just recently said I couldn't talk about my family or my ex-wife or anything, but if you have children, if your children were trained to think that your dad was sexual predator and a monster.
So I'm sorry, we came in a little bit late. Why is it that you wanted to be here?
Okay, so there are tons, and it's not Jodi Hildebrandt is the tip of the iceberg. The Mormon Church was doing this operation where they were using religious beliefs and they were using ethical therapists to enforce them, and it was an area of exploitation, and it was a horrific area. It was exploitation because it created horrible divorces that should have been normal divorces. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of families going through these courts, and Jodi was like an icon. Her doctrine. Okay, so here's the problem. Everybody.
So today it sounds like was a little bit of like justice for you too.
Oh, Jodi, yeah, Ruby Frank. When I saw Ruby Frank, I saw my ex-wife sitting there saying the exact same thing. That my ex-wife would have said the exact same thing Ruby Frankie said today, and a lot of other women would have said the same thing. You have no idea how many victims are out there that their minds have been messed up so much with this. The prosecutor said that he said that the children thought it was their fault. All of the adult men think it's their fault. All of the women think it's their fault. I have had countless emails and messages.
Sorry, what was your name?
I'm Adam Paul Steed. I'm the guy that got Jodi's license from Doppel removed. Well, my dad and mom get the credit. But you know, and they said that the Doppel department said, we have evidence here for criminal charges against Jodi. This is 13 years ago. It's identical stuff. So I almost like fell over in the courtroom when I heard Jodi say that she loved those children. Jodi doesn't love children. Jodi's like Ted Bundy. In fact, one time I was in a
Do you feel that she should have a longer sentence than Ruby?
Jodi, here's the problem. Somebody hits a person and runs. That's like two variables, a car and someone running. They catch them. Jodi's got like 30 variables, including a huge issue with the Mormon church racketing. I mean, they're all ducking low and covering. In fact, I looked at an email, and I can show this to you guys. This is factual evidence, where it should have been a neutral person in the courts. Kelly Peterson, the guardian ad litem, when they were punishing me in the family custody courts, he said that my act to turn Jodi Hildebrandt in was an act of vengeance, and they took my kids away from me. Because I performed an act of vengeance. That's in this court was sitting there completely in bed with Jodi. They've done it. I talked to Doug Thayer's daughter. She saw relations. I mean, these aggressive attorneys working with Jodi, Commissioner Patton. All these people know about Jodi. The BYU Honor Code office before they kicked me out of school for being a whistleblower on child abuse, I guess. Jodi Hildebrandt went there and told them I was the most dangerous man she'd ever met in her lifetime. We have hundreds of pages of this stuff, of Jodi Hildebrandt working with top church leaders to dispel me. I got kicked out of school my senior year. This lady, we've got all this documentation of how she talks, how she walks. Now, here's what I do want to say. I don't like Ruby Frankie, but I don't know her. I just think you have to be a selfish person to fall for Jodi's stuff. She's got a certain kind of carrot that gets certain kind of people. But Ruby Frankie would have never done any of this stuff if Jodi Hildebrandt hadn't been the mastermind and just completely created this. Ruby Frankie's not dangerous in the sense she's not going to go out and do this to more kids, but Jodi Hildebrandt will. When we went to Doppel, Doppel ordered her to go through all this ethical stuff. She went through the whole thing with shining colors, and she turned around and did the same stuff again. I mean, even when she was teaching us that we were safe to come to her and stuff, she was abusing children at the same time with one hand and teaching a godliness with another hand.
So what's her motivation?
Jodi Hildebrandt had a weird relationship with my ex-wife. It was a dual relationship. It was bordering sexual in nature. I mean, she went through different women that made her look powerful and important. God. My ex-wife's dad was an Area 70 in the Mormon church. And Jodi Hildebrandt wanted power, but I know her instincts. When you're in a pain and suffering, when you talk about something and she finds a way to hurt you, it makes her blush. It makes her feel euphoric. I've seen her act that way and look that way in the worst of circumstances. So I always compare Jodi Hildebrandt to Ted Bundy because nobody can figure out why a serial killer would kill people. Jodi Hildebrandt, she grows off of people's pain and destruction. And when she sat there and said she loved those kids, I almost fell out of my chair. The only thing her version of loving children is find a way to make them hurt more than anything possible. It's like an energy she feeds off of.
Here, I'll grab it. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't. It's a little traumatic for me, so if I monologue, I'm sorry. Does anybody have a question?
Covered a lot. Covered a lot.
We got a ton of documentation. That fourth district court's got to be ducking their heads right now because I do want to say something. There's countless children out there that have been raised to believe their fathers are predators because of Jodi Hildebrandt. And the fourth district court and other courts involved don't want to show they made mistakes. So who's going to help those children? Like, who's going to help them? Like, this is a court of public opinion. People need to find out the truth to go help all these children and help all these people come forward. And the fact that the court tried to silence me for being on the front edge of coming forward is just an example of how the same notorious people in power back then that allowed Jodi to do all this stuff are alive and thriving today. And if you give a damn about our children, you got to do the same thing I do and fight for what's true.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Adam. That was Adam Steed. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was getting it.
Okay, so Adam dropping some bombs. I saw Adam a long time ago on Mormon Stories podcast. He came out with his story, his personal story of being abused by the Boy Scouts of America, all while being raised as a Mormon. Him and Earl, his dad, changed the laws on the sentencing for pedophiles in Utah. So I wanted to share that clip with you guys. I thought that was pretty powerful, pretty crazy. Thank you for listening today. I'll see you in the next video.